Good afternoon and welcome to our first Friday conference Zoom meeting for presidents, club officers, and board members of the Garden Club of South Carolina. I'm Trish Bender, your president, and I'm really happy to be with you to share with you one of the most important things to me personally, and that is planting America through planting trees in your own gardens, in your own communities, and throughout South Carolina and beyond. When people ask you about Garden Club of South Carolina, remember you want to have that 30-second response when they say, "What's Garden Club all about?" So just to reiterate, it is about that we learn together, we grow, we connect, and we serve. We learn how to grow things. We learn about stewardship. We grow. We're actual gardeners that get our hands dirty. We connect our communities with the vital resources and the information that they need to succeed. And we are all about serving to make South Carolina greener and more beautiful and more sustainable. So learn, grow, connect, and serve. Those are our 4 key words whenever anyone asks you, why are you in a garden club? That's why. So today we're here to talk about 2 different things. We have Arbor Day coming up, and if you've read this month's newsletter, you'll notice that we asked our resident experts, our district chairs, to talk about and share with us their favorite trees. And we're going to do that today again with our special guest, Victoria Bergeson, the NGC chair for not only climate change, but a special initiative called Each One Plant One. When we talk about, what is the best way that we can celebrate Arbor Day? It's a real simple answer. We want to plant, 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 plant. And we don't just want to plant any old tree, because historically, we have a tendency in South Carolina to be romantically attached to our heritage trees, not necessarily our native trees. And if we can make one shift from today forward, it is to prioritize native trees over heritage trees. And what do I mean by heritage trees? I mean crepe myrtles. I mean the non-native exotic species that we all know and love, but that have outpaced the South Carolina native trees. So we want to make sure that we restore our native ecosystems with a new fervor. So plant, 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 plant. There are many ways to celebrate Arbor Day.
Good afternoon, Madam President. Just wanted to inform everybody, Arbor Day is December the 4th, 2020, but times are different with COVID-19. So I've come up with a few ideas for Arbor Day. Plant a tree for your birthday. My husband just had a birthday and we planted a red mulberry tree. It's a native and it's Mars rubra. It is a medium size and it has fruit for animals and humans. And my husband likes to make mulberry jam and we enjoy that.
You really mean mulberry wine, right?
Well, no, he makes mulberry jam and he likes to put it on his biscuits for breakfast. Okay. But he's pretty good about that, but he makes a big mess. But anyway, native trees are best to plant so that they'll thrive. There's different kinds. Silver bell's one of my favorites. There's black gum, tulip tree, dogwood, red maple, sourwood, hickory, walnut, white, black, cherry oak, just to name a few. If each of us would plant a tree this year and next for our birthday, it would exceed our expectations for Arbor Day. some of the other ideas I came up with was hold a virtual Arbor Day celebration, such as I talked to my husband who worked at Wofford College, and I talked about he and I going along with a video camera and videoing some of the trees on the campus and sharing that with other members in the garden club. You could do a city park tour, just any number of parks in your area and then share them. I think it's a good idea. We've always been good to share, so you could give away a free tree seedling out of your yard. Dig up a lot of them and take them to the grocery stores or restaurants to give away. Of course, you'd have to get the okay with the owners, but I'm sure they would be pleased to do that if they knew they were helping. And also you could have a contest and see which of the garden clubs can plant the most trees in your district and share that information. You could invite an arborist to your local Zoom meeting and ask questions of them. And with Christmas coming up, I thought, well, it'd be nice to give a tree for a present, and that would be a long-lasting present. You could celebrate a baby being born. You could call the tree theirs and show them their tree for years to come and teach about the growth of trees and how to take care of them. I thought about you could read a book about trees to your grandchildren and other children and videotape it and share that. Trees provide shade, wildlife habitat, erosion control, beauty. And Arbor Day Foundation says they also offer huge benefits by absorbing carbon dioxide. Climate change is affecting the world, so planting trees is a significant way of helping. They clean our air. You can also plant a tree in memory of someone, and you can get some real good information if you check out www.arborday.org. It's a good idea to watch for free tree promotions in your area. And like I said, watch for seedlings in your yard and ask nearby neighbors if they have any seedlings, because people like to trade and share extra seedlings. Check your local tree planting organizations. And this is what I say: happy birthday to me, happy birthday to me, happy birthday to a tree, plant trees.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful, Nancy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for that inspiration. So Nancy's come up with some really great ideas. And just to reiterate some of those, one of the best ways that you as a garden club can celebrate Arbor Day is to partner, because so often December comes around, we all do our little photo op with one tree. And what Nancy is inviting us to do is each one plant one tree. And Victoria will be talking about that too. But some of the best ways that we can encourage each person to plant one is to partner with local resources. South Carolina Forestry Commission has some amazing resources. They can provide you discounts on bulk orders of tree saplings. They'll give you tree literature, little booklets that you can hand out. They will come and speak to your community about trees, and you can coordinate tree walks with them. The DNR will also provide essential resources in this same vein. One thing I would ask every club member, every club president to do is appoint a tree chairperson. A lot of times we appoint lots of different chair people, but we don't really know what the Arbor Day or the tree chairman is supposed to do. Instead of calling them the Arbor Day chair, call them the tree chairman, because that way they can exercise their job description all through the calendar year. They can organize and educate the community, because remember, we are not gathering together just to educate ourselves. We are gathering together to educate and share the information with our community. So try to have at least one community event per year where you are talking about trees, where you're giving away trees, where you're coordinating a tree stewardship event. And there are many different flavors of that. Nancy mentioned the arborday.org, an excellent, excellent national organization that provides lots of different ways for you to plant trees and give trees through their organizational gifts. When you join Arbor Day, you automatically get 10 free saplings sent to you, which you can either plant in your own yard or give away. But every time you order cards through the Arbor Day organization, each card plants a tree in the national forest as well. The other way that Arbor Day allows you to expand your outreach is by ordering in bulk and gifting a tree. Like Nancy had said, you can do it in honor of a birthday, a birth, a death, a wedding, a passing, anything that you want to mark or memorialize. Arbor Day can help you do that, or you can do that through your own giving through Arbor Day. I know we had a club member that turned 100, believe it or not. And she was the writer, the actual person that wrote Gone with the Wind, Tallulah Foster, not the author, but the transcriptionist. And when she turned 100 in our club, we bought 100 trees and planted them in her honor. And that just brought her to tears. So there are many ways to do that. The other thing I would encourage you to do is use the power of the new technologies that we have. There's an incredible video that Arbor Day just put out called The Time for Trees. It's an initiative. It's like a 6-minute video. You can find that on their website and share that on your social media. Sharing it between now and Arbor Day is an excellent way to get people in the mindset of Arbor Day planting. Another thing that many of the clubs are doing throughout South Carolina, and I know this because I read the yearbooks and I read the award applications, is they are collecting historic acorns from monument trees. You know, every city has a historic tree. In our area, it's the angel oak. And, you know, you can't even get an angel oak acorn anymore, because as soon as they drop, there's like people with their hand out getting ready to get them. But there are historic trees in just about every neighborhood. What I do in our neighborhood is I go around, and this is the perfect month to do it because the acorns are dropping everywhere. And I try to find live oaks, water oaks, and particularly red oaks, because red oaks are the most endangered oaks in our area. And I collect those acorns and I just pop them in a raised bed. And when they grow, I share them. So it doesn't cost you anything. It's a wonderful outreach opportunity. The other thing that Nancy mentioned was organizing a tree walk. Now, I can tell you that this is probably one of the most successful events that I have seen in Garden Club with regard to trees. Because what this does, when you take an arborist through your neighborhood or through an alley of trees, the arborist has a very casual approach, and it allows people to just walk along with that person to learn about not only tree stewardship, but how to tell a live oak from a red oak, from a water oak, from a willow oak, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. How to identify the problems of the tree without having to spend a fortune to get an arborist to come out and give you an estimate for something that they want to sell you. It's almost free advice. We've done this in our garden club for many, many years. We do it once a year in the spring. We teach about all of the various troubleshooting things that you can identify with your trees. We talk about the importance of a cleared root zone, where it's like a woman, where you want her neck and her shoulders to show. It's the same way with the root zone of a tree. And then we answer questions, and we really make sure that people know that we are the advocates for the trees. So that's an excellent way to do that. For those of you who are not familiar, National Garden Club has an initiative called Penny Pines. And this has been going on for many, many, many years, way before me. And it's $68. And for each $68, they'll plant an acre of pine trees. So it's something that you can do to collect in your club or put at your local garden center and let people know that you really care, particularly pine trees, because in local home gardens, people have this fear and aversion towards pine trees, which is unfortunate, and yet they're so essential. Of course, I want everyone to share this month's issue of the Scoop for Arbor Day. If you can just print that out and just give it to 10 of your friends. It talks about the importance of trees, and it talks about what trees are recommended for their area. And of course, I also want to remind you that even though this is not planting a tree, by celebrating the state Christmas tree, we are also teaching tree stewardship. This year's event will be Sunday, November 22nd. Now, it will be a COVID-safe event, and it will be much, much scaled back from our typical events, but it will be Sunday, November 22nd at 5 p.m. So these are just some ways that you can share Arbor Day with your local community. I'd like to hear, before we move to Victoria, and I apologize for the printer working from home. I'd like to hear from you. I want to unmute everyone for just a moment and hear your ideas. How are you celebrating Arbor Day this year with your club? You're all unmuted now, so no excuse.
Well, I could go first.
Okay, Sarah.
Well, we missed it last year because we were going to do it in April. Actually, it was early May. So because of COVID, it got canceled.
Mm-hmm.
And, we already bought the tree, so we're going to reschedule it this fall. We were going to plant a tree at Carolina Park Elementary School, which is a brand new school.
Okay.
And have a program with the children, in the tree planting process. But we're waiting to hear back from the principal when it's a good time, because they're dealing with
They're dealing with a lot.
Yeah, so that I don't even know if we'll do something else besides that, but that we're just recovering from last year. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
Well, last year we had a big celebration because we gave 2,500 to plant trees all up and down Highway 52. No, we don't have anything really big planned this year.
Mm-hmm.
One of the questions I had in mind, though, we have been able to get grants for trees. The city has, and we just have got lots of crepe myrtles, and crepe myrtles seem to thrive, and so we plant them all over the place. Now, you said those are heritage trees, but not native trees, and that dogwoods, for example, are native trees. Well, I know dogwoods sometimes are more temperamental, and they get diseases. So I just wondered, what is the negative of planting the crepe myrtles, that if you plant them in sun, they do seem to thrive?
Victoria, I'm going to let you address that question.
Okay, you haven't left me much to speak about anyway, so that's fine.
Oh, we got plenty. I'm sure you've got plenty to share.
Right. And the NGC Climate Chair, and I am also the Plant America with Trees Chairman. I have this logo here. Plant America is actually a grant program. And I want everybody to remember that this grant program exists. The deadline for 2020 was October 15th, but this will be continuing in the next administration. So think about what you might apply for. They will give you as much as $1,000 toward a project. And the application is only 2 pages long. It's very, very easy to do. So remember Plant America as a good opportunity. Many of us are being, our fundraising has been considerably troubled by not having our plant sales and various other things because of COVID-19. But if you have a good community project that you'd like to go ahead with, think about trying to get some money next year. I also want to remind you that NGC has a natural disaster fund. And in fact, Keeping in Touch, which is an NGC newsletter that just came out, they gave several $5,000 grants to clubs that were helping to repair natural disasters in various botanical gardens, parks, places like that. We have been very lucky this year. I don't think we've had any horrendous natural disasters, but just always keep that in mind, that if you do suffer from some kind of natural disaster, that you could get significant funding in order to try to plant things again. Okay, now, we have each one plant one. We want each National Garden Club member, that's about 165,000 of us, we want each one to plant 1 tree per year. It is estimated that to really make a significant impact on climate change, we need to plant 1 trillion trees globally. And there are many NGOs and governments that have major planting initiatives. But for each of us to plant a tree, and especially to not necessarily, you can plant it in your own yard, you can plant it in somebody else's yard, but try to make it an educational exercise so that you are sharing with other people why you are planting a tree. Now we'll go talk about the crepe myrtles. Why do we want to plant a native tree? Well, we have many beautiful, beautiful trees that are native to South Carolina. A tree that is native to South Carolina is also part of our natural biome, so that insects, birds, different kinds of squirrels, wildlife, all of those things are part of a natural ecosystem that is all a cyclical kind of thing. And if you bring in a crepe myrtle, you might as well be just putting an artificial tree there, because that tree is not part of the biome that has developed. And that is basically the answer there. And this list is organized by the types of soil and sun conditions you have. It is not done by hardiness zones, because these trees on this list will grow in upstate and they will grow down here in Beaufort. So there's a wide range. What you really need to know are the actual conditions. So certainly there are some trees that are native down here that won't do well upstate, but there are a great many that will grow anywhere in the state. So first we're going to talk about dry sun, which is typically early succession dominated by grasses. And the red maple is just a spectacular tree. March, we looked up, and this tree, the samaras, which are the seed cases, hanging down, there's just a red haze all around the tree. It was just spectacular to see that on a summer day. And of course, with the red maple, you will also get some fall color. The eastern red cedar also grows in this type of area. Again, this is a picture from Savannah. This is an older tree. And you can see that although it has fallen over, it is still thriving. But it's a stunningly beautiful tree. Maybe not for your home garden, but in larger landscapes, the eastern red cedar is beautiful. Now here we've got the southern magnolia. We all are very familiar with that. You can't really get a more beautiful tree. The leaves are beautiful, the undersides, the oversides, the fruit, they're wonderful. And there are many types of magnolias that you can grow in your garden, because this particular one, the Magnolia grandiflora, is a very large tree and you might not have room for it in your typical home garden, but do consider it. And of course, the leaves are spectacular for floral arrangement. Redbud is an easy tree to grow. The Beaufort Garden Club just celebrated our 80th anniversary in 2020, and we donated 80 redbud saplings to the community. We took them to the farmers market, and we gave them away to first come, first serve. We actually got rid of them all in 15 minutes. We had planned that we would be there for an hour or two, and everybody wanted the saplings. They're beautiful. The leaves are heart-shaped, and just these small, tiny flowers that come out before the leaves are just delightful. You can also there are many cultivars with different foliage and so on, but do keep in mind that they have done studies, and my favorite is the forest pansy, which has these deep sort of burgundy heart-shaped leaves. The caterpillars prefer the green leaves. They don't go for the red ones. Perhaps it's because of the chlorophyll content is different if you have a colored leaf. So go ahead and plant some cultivars, but you can plant some of the native species as well, and that will be helpful for the environment. The black gum tree is not one that you often see in landscapes. You can get wonderful fall color down here if you choose the right trees. There are many pines, and actually on the list it just says we just have Pinus species, because there are so many different ones you can have. This is the loblolly pine, which has lovely candles that turn almost fluorescent at one point. It's an evergreen. It doesn't take up much room in the landscape because it is tall and narrow, and it has beautiful bark. The bark is something to really consider when you're thinking about trees, especially now in this case it's an evergreen, but if you're talking about a deciduous tree, you may have a tree without foliage for several months of the year, and if the bark is going to be the most dominant feature in your landscape. So think about choosing a species that has interesting bark, because that will add winter interest to your landscaping. People hate sweet gums. I understand that if you put it right next to your driveway, it can be a pain, but they have beautiful, beautiful fall color. And the reason people hate them, I don't know if you can see my pointer, but there are the sweet gum balls, as they call them. They're little spiky seed capsules, and they go all over the place. They're very difficult to clean up, and people really hate them. But garden club members also make wonderfully creative wreaths and Christmas trees and do all kinds of crafting with them. They take spray paint very well, so it's sort of like a garden clubber's ideal thing. So if you have room for one of these and don't have to plant it right next to a path or your driveway or something, do consider the sweet gum. Live oaks. Now, live oaks for me are magnificent. They are wonderful. And part of the reason I bought the home that I did is because I have 1/3 of an acre and I have 7 live oaks, but they are not like this one. Live oaks do not need to be wide spreading. They can be pruned up so that it's possible to have more of them in a small area. This is a swamp white oak, and I actually took this picture in Natchez, Mississippi, but look at the trunk on that. Isn't that fascinating? And I have also we planted some of those in a park up in Ohio to commemorate 2001. So that was, a long time ago, but it has a very wide range because, as I said, this is Natchez, Mississippi, and it was one of the species recommended to us by the Ohio Department of Natural Resources when we were looking to plant something for a memorial site in a park. This is the white oak, and the foliage on this does get darker green. I took this in May or June, and you see it really is that chartreuse. I didn't doctor this photo. The foliage can be really lovely, and of course you get your some fall color. Not as much, say, in Beaufort as you might in upstate areas, but you can still get some fall color. Now, swamp chestnut oak. This is another picture from the Savannah Refuge. And you're thinking, why is she showing us this picture of this ratty old branch? Well, the reason I'm doing it is because this is great news. This is a wonderful picture because see how those leaves are all chomped and eaten up? What ate those leaves? It was caterpillars, and those caterpillars went on to become butterflies and moths, or else they went down the gullets of baby birds. So this tree is serving a really important function. In fact, all oaks are enormous food sources for caterpillars, and therefore they are very important for our bird populations as well, to say nothing of the acorns that are eaten by squirrels and other small animals and so on and so forth. You're not going to typically see this kind of damage from the ground. I had a very big lens on my camera the day I took this, so it doesn't look this awful if you actually have one of these in your landscaping. But the swamp chestnut oak, like all oaks, is a good plant for your environment. Cherry bark oak, again, just look at the different kinds of barks that are available on the different trees. And in carbon sequestration, we ideally will have trees that are long-lived, and oaks are pretty much, they are the longest lived of the trees that we can typically use in our landscape. I mean, there are some like that that grow in special conditions, but in terms of plant you could put in your garden, your oak tree is going to be the longest lived. And as long as that tree is living, it is sequestering carbon in its wood. And if it dies and it is chopped up, and anything you have, if you have furniture, flooring, any part of your house that's wood, that wood is still sequestering the carbon. The carbon doesn't get released into the atmosphere again unless you burn it or let it rot away somehow. But that is a much slower process, obviously. But oaks are really a good choice. River birches. These are very popular just because they really are beautiful. Look at that. Look at the picture of that bark. Many people plant them in the wrong place. They really do like moist, wet soil. So think carefully about where you're planting it. They are also larger than many people realize. And I have often seen that people have planted, they see this adorable little river birch and they plant it way too close to their house. They're not gigantic trees, but they're not tiny little trees that you want to plant right next to your home. But they are a great choice for a wet area. American hornbeam, not a particularly exciting tree necessarily, but it is a very good choice. The wood is used for a lot of things. It's considered a desirable wood, and it's just adds some interest to the landscape. Many of us over the years have planted trees in school gardens. Think about planting, if it's a school garden or maybe a church garden or some other semi-public place, planting different kinds of trees that are less seen in the normal home landscape, in a place where you can have programs and teach people about the different trees and what the wood is like, and whether there are any herbal uses for those leaves, whether the sap has any special properties. You can use a tree as a really good educational point, as well as having it sequester carbon, provide shade, and of course provide a lot of beauty to the landscape. This was 3 blocks from my house in January. They came in and they almost clear cut 2 very large lots on the waterfront. This is what is happening. Forget there are the forest fires and so on out west, but especially in Beaufort County, we are still seeing a lot of development, and that's true also of the rest of South Carolina. There's a lot of development, and we need to plant a lot of trees just to keep up with what people are wantonly felling. So, we don't want to live in a world that looks like this. Of course, this was a January day and it was like 7 o'clock in the morning. So it really does look very bleak, but it still looks pretty awful. And this is, almost a year later.
I hope that with Victoria's information and Nancy's information and the information that we gave you earlier, you have some new ideas about what trees that you could possibly plant and celebrate Arbor Day in your local community. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone, if we can, and open it up for a few questions. We have about 7 minutes before we close. Louise, you originally had a question.
No, I was just going to tell you what we were going to be doing for our Arbor Day.
Yeah, what's that?
We, well, we've worked kind of in conjunction with the Denmark Downtown Development Group, and we planted with them like 18, I hate to say it, but we planted crepe myrtles on a berm where Highway 78 comes in, goes through Denmark. And so to keep it going for even longer, we every year for the last, I don't know, 10 years maybe, have tried to plant one in memory of someone in our community. And so we're continuing that this year, and we're going to plant it in memory of one of our members who was 95 when she passed. She was a judge and a longtime member of our club. And so it's a beautiful presentation when you ride into town, because there was nothing there so we've worked with our town to help beautify. So we feel good that we've walked that road together. So we're planning this year's on Arbor Day.
Thank you. Thank you. Mary Ann, were you going to share something?
Yes, I was just going to refer to Victoria. There are some trees that can be planted in containers. A lot of the people are having smaller gardens. Now, my yard has 200-year-old oaks, white oak, red oaks, but there are some pines that can actually be planted in large containers if you do not have enough room to be able to plant these trees. The other point I wanted to make is there are trees that naturally have little plantlets, and the red maple seems to be one of them. we had the past president of the Garden Club of South Carolina, Corey Whitlock, and we gathered seedlings from her yard years ago. And now those seedlings are like 15 feet tall. They're supposed to be miniatures, but now they have grown that tall. And we think of her. So it can be done. You can actually be gathering. That does not cost money.
Thank you, Mary Ann. That's a great example. In Charleston, the Garden Club of Charleston, there is a 96-year-old member who collects every one of her maple seedlings as well and gives them out. And everyone feels so honored to receive a tree. And she actually plants them in an eggshell so that you can just plant the entire eggshell and everything when you get a tree. So yeah, Miss McClellan. So anyone else want to share anything with us before we close?
I do want to say this, Mary Rivers just had knee surgery.
Yes,
She's
thank you.
doing fabulously.
Thank you for letting us know. We did get the email from Debbie about Mary, so I'm really happy to hear that she's doing well. So before we close, I just want to make sure that couple things about crepe myrtles, okay? We are not trying to tell you that you should go out and chop down every crepe myrtle that you've ever planted. There's a reason that they've become a heritage tree in South Carolina, and that is they have a very long history of beauty. They have gorgeous bark, and of course, everyone loves their flowers. What we are asking you to do is to honor the past, but plant for the future. And the best way that we can do that is to shift our focus away from invasive species. And believe it or not, the crepe myrtle has now become targeted as an invasive species. And why? It's because of the little seedlings. So one way that you can help if you keep your crepe myrtle in check is to not let it go to seed, in the same way that we just posted a few weeks ago about if you can't bear to pull out your Nandina, please cut the berries before the cedar waxwings come through. So a couple of weeks ago was the perfect time for you to cut your Nandina berries. If you have Nandina in your yard, you want to cut them right now. I know that everybody likes to wait until the holidays and put them in their centerpieces. I'm asking you to change that and cut them and throw them away. Don't compost them. Throw the seedlings away. Throw the berries away. They're poisonous to the cedar waxwings because they consume them in such large quantities. And every other bird and wildlife that eats on those berries will defecate the seeds. And that's how crepe myrtles and Nandina and popcorn tree and so many of our invasive species have become invasive. What we don't realize is that they're not invasive in our yards usually. They're usually food for wildlife that drops them in the woods. And that's how we now have whole forests full of privet hedge and ligustrum and Nandina, and that's how it happens. So as gardeners and garden club members, it is our duty to be the educational resource for our community. Whether you know it or not, people expect you to know, and people expect you to be the stewards that our mission says we are. So the best example that we can do is to plant native trees. Now, when you're looking at crepe myrtles, what's a great tree that provides beautiful bark? A river birch, a redbud, to give you that pop of color that the crepe myrtle flowers will. Victoria mentioned sycamores. Sycamore is my absolutely all-time favorite tree. Not only for its leaves, but for its bark. It's got the most gorgeous bark, in my opinion, of any tree in South Carolina. So there are just so many different things. Thank you for mentioning the American hornbeam. The American hornbeam is an excellent habitat eco-source tree. It provides so many ecosystem services. Another tree that gets a really bad rap, but deserves a space in your forest garden is a hackberry. You don't really have to do anything for it to arrive. The birds will bring it to you. I can tell you that the South Carolina Botanical Garden planted a small grove of hackberries. That is how they got up to 300 species of birds migrating through and stopping in, because birds love hackberries. So even though they're not the most gorgeous tree, they're not sexy, as Andy Cabe would say, they are an excellent tree to blend into your understory. A last thing that I want to share with you is make sure, like we've said 100 times before, that you layer, layer, layer. Don't just plant one tree to stand alone. Plant 4 trees. Plant a canopy layer, a subcanopy, a shrub tree, and then a subshrub tree. The trees will grow together. They will interweave and form a cohesive bond underground that will actually strengthen the trees themselves. So never worry about planting trees too close to other trees. They actually do better when they're planted together. So on that note, is there any last statement that anyone else would like to make? Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. Just a reminder, our next meeting will be the GCSE classroom. That's the second Wednesday of this month. We have a very special presentation on the oldest memorial garden in America, which is right here in Columbia, South Carolina, adjacent to the governor's mansion. And we will have some special guests to celebrate and honor the veterans on Memorial Day, on Veterans Day itself. So that'll be next Wednesday, November 11th from 2 to 3. So thank you so much for joining us today. I hope that you